Greetings, fellow tarot travelers, tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch. And so now the looming topic for our time currently are the prospects of an oil war. Well, what precisely is an oil war? It means that, as an example, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE attack Iran. They could say it's for political reasons, for social reasons, but the bottom line is there's oil. There's oil there, there's oil pipelines. We could also have a war with Russia, and we could say it's to liberate Crimea or for the sake of the Ukraine, but it's for oil, the number one item that causes the Russian economy to be as successful as it is oil. And there's not just oil, but there's oil pipelines. And then again, we bring up the topic of Venezuela. Why would we go to war in Venezuela? Well, Venezuela has the largest petroleum holdings of any country on earth currently underground, and all we have to do is take over the country to have that oil. And then, the Palestinians are constantly having to fight to keep their fishing rights because Israel keeps revoking the distance, and during the last barrage of missiles that were launched into Israel, the fishing rights were reduced. Why is that? Because there's a huge natural gas field off the coast of Israel, and if the Palestinians don't have fishing rights there, they have less of a claim on those rights to that natural gas. Likewise, from what I've heard over at the field of Armageddon, or Armageddon, where the Armageddon War is supposed to occur, there's also another large holding of natural gas and possibly oil underground. Who knows, maybe that's why the war to end all wars occurs there biblically. But the point is, at all the hot spots where there seems to be conflict and war brewing, there's either a pipeline or an oil rig that's at stake. And so what we're facing isn't a world war, it's a world oil war. And the reason why America bombed Libya and Iraq is that they would no longer sell their oil with the United States petrodollar. And to any country to not do that, or any large oil interest to not do that, and not use the money that was printed and put on the international market for the sake of oil trade in US dollars, it would crash the American economy and the American dollar. And so that's why America always will militaristically protect the petrodollar. So there you have it. These are the hot spots. That's the great war prospect. It's not about freedom, and it's not about tyranny, and it's not about spreading democracy. It's about oil. And I think most people realize that. I mean, even the war in Syria is about pipelines. And, the problems that the world is having with Turkey, it's about pipelines. And even the Kurdish issue, it's about pipelines. And so there you have it. It's either pipelines, oil, or natural gas. And so the bottom line is we can't burn all the natural gas and all the oil and exploit all the resources of the earth and use it all up. Because if we do, we'll end up with a poisoned ground table of water and ruined air and methane levels that are so high. We'll have worse than global warming. We'll have an extinction on our hands. So we can't use all the petroleum products of the earth, and yet we're willing to kill everybody over them. It's a strange scenario. So today I'm using the Jean Noblet Grunge Blue edition of tarot cards. And it doesn't come with a real box if you buy it. It comes with a really cheesy box. So I have no box to share with you today. But the cards themselves, they're great. So we'll look at the first card and see what it has to say about all of this. And it is, the Death card. And here's the foundation of the oil war. Massive death. Well, it's just like I said. We can't burn all the oil. If we take all the oil out of Venezuela, take all the oil out of Saudi Arabia, take all the oil out of Iran, take all the oil out of Russia, and if we put pipelines to everywhere on earth and burn it all in industry and in housing, guess what? There's no air to breathe and we all die. And if we go to an oil war, we all die. I mean, the whole thing is just a death wish within a death wish within a death wish. And here's the card of death to prove the point. And this is the foundation card to the reading. And this card is looking towards the past, which means the whole idea of oil is a retro idea. I mean, we shouldn't even be contemplating using more oil. We should already be at a point where oil is banned globally because we already have climate change and we have deozonation and we have enormous pollution problems all over the world with water and with air and with land. And petroleum seems to be at the source of it, whether it's the plastic bottle problem and plastics as a waste product. Well, that's a petroleum-based product. The second card is, and this is where we are now, and that is the Ten of Swords, which represents two sides in a battle that have exhausted themselves, exhausted their resources, and they don't have the strength to lift a sword to fight. They're so tired from fighting. And you know what? We have an exhausted planet. I've received this Ten of Swords for these mundane tarot readings about governmental events frequently in the center because we sit at a precipice of completely exhausted resources. We've exhausted the primary source of oil. We were going into secondary and tertiary oil fields that don't produce as great of oil and are harder to produce and involve much more of pumping operations to produce a much lower grade crude. And the world is exhausted with the environmental damage and the warring nations, whether it's the Muslims or the capitalists or the communists. Everybody's exhausted from war and confrontation and sabotage and all the gamesmanship that's been going on. That's why we haven't ignited into a global oil war yet. Everybody's too tired, too broke, and too overwhelmed from what they've been through and too ecologically ruined. Now we go to the third card, and it is the Chevalier de Coupe, which is the Knight of Cups. And as you can see, both the Knight of Cups and Death are looking towards the past. Absolutely nothing here is towards the future. Nothing is towards the present. This is all retro politics. It's about ancient animosities. It's about ancient biblical prophecies. That's what the Chevalier de Coupe is. You know, he's the wounded warrior who carries the cup of art and spirituality. And so he's someone who knows better. For example, America knew better when they destroyed Iraq, that creating a power vacuum in a destroyed country and sending the Iraqis back to the Stone Age is not a good way of functioning. And what did we do? We repeated it in Libya and we repeated it in Syria. And what did Russia do in Syria with the Syrian government? Why, they went to Idlib and bombed all the hospitals before they decided to bomb the people so that anybody who's wounded can just lay there, suffer, get an infection, and slowly die of a horrible death. I mean, these are backwards, retro ways of thinking. There's nothing progressive about it. What we have here is a situation where probably in the future, because the cup is like the church, we're going to have a religious war, and everybody's sure it's for Allah or for Jesus or for Yahweh or for whatever cause, for capitalism, for communism, for Americanism, for Zionism, for the old brand Russia, for the new brand Russia, for Iran, for Persia. But the truth is, it's all about oil. It's 100% about oil. This also represents oil holdings that are outside, that have been already pumped and are the holdings for countries. And what we're going to see is that the oil holdings are going to get depleted because of sanctions, and they're going to need more oil, and then they're going to choose for religious ideological beliefs sides, and they're willing to dive into a state of complete economic, ecological, humanistic exhaustion beyond compare, destroying themselves in a war. And if we go all the way to the end of this logic, it only will lead to the death of billions of people. I mean, literally, not millions, but billions of people. Well, I think in this particular reading, it's very clear that an oil war is in nobody's best interests. But let's have a look at this religious doctrinaire and the oil holdings that get depleted. Let's see what there is about that. And we see there's the Reine de Coupe, which is the Queen of Cups, and she is below the Knight of Cups. And remember, the Knight, see, now this is what's so interesting. The cups, I mean, they can represent many things. They could be biological warfare, they could be oil holdings, they could be religiosity. Usually it's all of the above. But here's the beliefs. Here's the fundamentalist Christian belief, the fundamentalist Catholic belief, the fundamentalist Muslim belief. But the Knight is the one who fights for it. He's the one who's willing to press the button and send the nuke for the sake of it. He's the one who's willing to put 10,000 people on the battlefield and have them all die for it. The Queen, she represents the ardent belief and the religious structure. Now, in terms of the cup being oil reserves, she is the supreme oil reserves of the planet. This is the willingness to fight and kill for oil reserves. She is the blueprint of plans for the oil pipelines. He is the ability to fight and kill and destroy and nuclear bomb countries for the sake of the divine plan of the oil pipelines. And for biological weapons, she's the world's biological weapons holding. It's going to be the bank of weapons. He deploys the weapons. And that's what the Knight does, and that's what the Queen does. So now we look at what's above, and we see it is false, which is strength. And strength is a very interesting card. It really is about fortitude and strength, but it's about feminine strength, which, you know, how do I describe feminine strength? There was a very famous quote by, I believe it was Chamberlain, who said, "We do not let women join the army because they're far too vicious." When you deal with feminine force, you're dealing with survivability of a species, and nobody will protect her young, nobody will protect her boundaries better than a woman. If you want a dog to protect your property, you get a female dog because they're ferocious in protecting their environment, their nationalism, their country, their pipeline, their oil reserve. So what we see here is two feminine cards that have absolute feminine instinctual destroy or be destroyed fight or flight instincts, and the feminine sophistication of holding reserves, military reserves, oil reserves, and moneyed reserves to withstand a global confrontation. But the bottom line is it's all deployed. It's all enacted. It's all willing to go to the front lines and press the buttons and send the drones, the troops, and everything else in between. Things you cannot imagine going to the front line, including genetically manufactured soldiers and robotics, and it goes on and on and on. Well, this isn't a very lovely, happy reading, so I want to give a quick look at the condition we're in, noting that, yes, it is a depleted planet, and yes, we are coming to the point of complete depletion of all oil resources. And so it's ridiculous to fight for the last drop. We need to go to solar, we need to go to wind, and we need to go to using hydrogen as a method of burning fuel. A new invention just came out of India recently where you can put water in the tank. The water is separated to hydrogen and oxygen in the motor of the car, and the car only leaves steam, and it only uses water to run. So these things, these inventions already exist. But let's see how we are in the present, that we can deal with and adjust this path so we don't destroy ourselves. And we have the Four of Cups, which represents family. I wonder how that will play out. And above we have the Lovers. That's very interesting. So do you mean to tell me The only path to peace, to resolve this dilemma, is to have some kind of royal wedding? Are you telling me that the Saudi Arabians have to acknowledge Israel and the Russians have to unite with America and the Shiites have to unite with the Sunni and we have to have union and marriage and love and see each other as a family? That'll never happen. I mean, it's a great idea, but, you know, what sells better on Wall Street, war or love? And I think it's going to come right down to that. Are we going to live in a state of fear and hatred and steal from other people and kill other people to get what we want? Or are we going to see the world as our family and love each other as we were intended to from the origins of life? Well, that's a big moral question. And maybe that's the exact dilemma we face in this exhausted, depleted, economically depleted, socially depleted, militaristically depleted, and ecologically depleted circumstance that we currently face.